The stars looked different from the bridge of the Endeavor. Captain Jake stood with his hands behind his back, watching the alien world grow larger on the screen. This was it. Humanity's first real meeting with the Galactic Empire. "We're being scanned again," Emma Collins said from her station. She was the team's language expert, a woman in her early 30s with sharp eyes and a calm voice. "That's the 5th time in 10 minutes. "They're just being careful," Jake replied. He tried to sound confident, but his heart was beating fast. Everything humanity had worked for came down to this moment. One wrong move and Earth might be rejected from the galactic community. Ben Carter checked his weapon for the 3rd time. The security officer was a large man with a military background. "I don't like this, Captain. We know almost nothing about these people." "That's why we're here, Ben, to learn." Jake straightened his uniform. It was dark blue with silver buttons designed to look both professional and peaceful. No aggressive colors, no military symbols, just simple and clean. The comm system crackled to life. A voice spoke in perfect English, though it had a strange musical quality. "Human vessel Endeavor, you are cleared to land. Follow the guidance beams. Do not deviate from the path." "Understood," Jake responded. "Following your guidance now." The ship descended through clouds that shimmered with colors Jake had never seen before. It was beautiful. Cities of crystal and metal spread across the continents, connected by streams of light. Everything looked ancient and advanced at the same time. They landed in a massive spaceport. Through the windows, Jake could see hundreds of different alien species moving about. Some walked on 2 legs like humans. Others floated or crawled or moved in ways that made no sense to his eyes. "This is incredible," Emma whispered. She was recording everything with her handheld device. "Stay focused," Jake reminded her gently. "We represent all of Earth today." A delegation met them at the landing ramp. The aliens were tall and elegant, with pale blue skin that seemed to glow slightly. Their eyes were large and silver, without any visible pupils. They wore flowing robes covered in complex patterns. The lead alien bowed deeply. "I am Ha, Minister of New Species Integration. Welcome to Prime, humans of Earth." Jake bowed back, though not as deeply. He had studied the protocols for hours. "Thank you, Minister. We are honored to be here. You will be taken to the palace. Our princess will oversee your introduction to the Empire. This is a great privilege. Most new species meet only with minor officials." Emma and Ben exchanged glances. A princess. That seemed either very good or very bad. They were escorted through the city in a vehicle that floated silently above the ground. Jake stared out the window, trying to memorize everything. Buildings reached toward the sky like frozen waterfalls. Gardens grew with plants in impossible colors. Everywhere he looked, there were aliens from dozens of different worlds. "They're staring at us," Ben muttered. "We're probably the first humans they've seen," Emma said. "I'd stare too." The palace was enormous. It rose from the center of the city like a mountain made of light and crystal. Guards in silver armor stood at every entrance. Their faces were hidden behind helmets that reflected the world like mirrors. Inside, the palace was even more impressive. Halls stretched in every direction, with ceilings so high they seemed to touch the sky. Holograms floated in the air, showing scenes from across the galaxy. The floor was made of something that looked like glass but felt solid under Jake's boots. They were taken to a massive room filled with hundreds of aliens. All of them wore fancy clothes and jewelry. All of them turned to stare when the humans entered. "The royal court," Ha explained quietly. "You must bow when the princess enters. You must not speak unless she addresses you first. You must not look directly at her face for more than 3 seconds. These are our sacred traditions." Jake felt his stomach tighten. So many rules, what if he made a mistake? A bell rang somewhere in the distance. The entire court fell silent and bowed. Jake quickly did the same, pulling Emma and Ben down with him. Footsteps echoed across the floor. Jake kept his head down, counting 3 seconds before he looked up. Princess Lyra's hand was not what he expected. She was young, probably close to his age if aliens aged the same way humans did. Her skin was a deeper blue than the other, and her eyes held a spark of intelligence that reminded Jake of Emma. She wore robes of silver and gold, with a crown that seemed to be made of frozen starlight. But what struck Jake most was her expression. She looked bored, incredibly, deeply bored. She walked to a throne at the far end of the room and sat down with practiced grace. An advisor whispered something in her ear. She nodded without interest. "Humans of Earth," she said in that same musical voice. "You seek to join the galactic community. The Empire has evaluated your species. You are young and primitive, but you show potential. I have been assigned to guide your introduction to civilized society." The way she said primitive made Jake's jaw tighten. He had dealt with arrogant people before, but this was different. She wasn't being mean. She genuinely believed humans were beneath her. The advisor began reading from a long scroll. "You will address the princess with the full honorific. You will bow when entering her presence. You will speak only when granted permission. You will." The list went on and on. Jake lost count after 20 rules. Beside him, Emma was frantically taking notes. Ben just looked angry. Finally, the reading ended. Princess Lyra stood up. "You will attend the evening reception. Do try not to embarrass yourselves. Dismissed." She turned to leave. As she did, a small device fell from her robes. It clattered across the floor and stopped near Jake's feet. Everyone froze. The advisor's face turned pale. "Do not touch the royal data slate. You must bow and wait for a servant to retrieve it." But Jake wasn't thinking about protocol. He was thinking about how his mother had taught him to be polite. He bent down, picked up the device, and walked over to Princess Lyra. "Here you go, Your Highness," he said, holding it out to her. "Dropped your tablet." The entire court gasped. The advisor made a choking sound. Ben grabbed Jake's arm, but it was too late. Princess Lyra stared at him. Her silver eyes were wide with shock. No one had ever just handed something to her before. Servants crawled on their hands and knees to return dropped items. Foreign dignitaries bowed and waited for permission to approach. But this human had just walked up to her like she was a normal person. She took the data slate slowly, her fingers brushing against his for just a moment. "Thank you," she said quietly. Then louder, "You are dismissed." As they were hurried out of the throne room, Jake could feel dozens of eyes burning into his back. He had broken protocol in the first 5 minutes. This was either going to be a very short diplomatic mission or a very interesting one. That night Jake couldn't sleep. The guest quarters were comfortable, but his mind kept replaying the moment in the throne room. He had seen something in the princess's eyes when she looked at him. Not anger, something else. Surprise, maybe, or curiosity. He decided to take a walk. The palace gardens were open to guests, and he needed to clear his head. The gardens were beautiful in the moonlight. 3 moons hung in the sky, each a different color. The plants seemed to glow softly, and the air smelled like cinnamon and rain. Jake found a bench near a fountain and sat down. He looked up at the stars, trying to spot the tiny yellow sun that warmed Earth. Somewhere up there was home, his family, his world. And here he was, millions of miles away, probably having ruined humanity's chances at joining the galactic community. "It's that one," a voice said behind him. "The small yellow star near the red giant." Jake jumped up and spun around. Princess Lyra stood there in simple clothes without her crown or formal robes. She looked different, younger, more real. "Your Highness, I didn't know you were. I should bow." "Please don't," she said, sounding tired. "I've had enough bowing for one day." She walked over and sat on the bench. After a moment, Jake sat down too, leaving a respectful distance between them. They sat in silence for a while, both looking at the stars. "You broke 17 protocols today," Lyra said finally. "I know, I'm sorry." Don't be. It was the most interesting thing that's happened in years. She glanced at him. What's your name? Your real name, not your title. Jake. Jake, she tested the word. I'm Lyra. I know. Princess Lyra's hand of the Eternal Dynasty, daughter of. Just Lyra, she interrupted. At least here in the garden, can we just be two people talking? Jake looked at her and saw something he understood. Loneliness. The weight of expectations. The desire to be seen as a person, not a symbol. Sure, Lyra, he said with a small smile. We can do that. And for the first time in a very long time, Princess Lyra's hand smiled back. The next morning, Jake woke up wondering if the garden conversation had been a dream. But when he entered the breakfast hall, he found an official message waiting. Princess Lyra had requested to serve as the primary liaison for the human delegation. The Emperor had approved. Emma raised an eyebrow when Jake told her. That's unusual. Princesses don't usually babysit new species. Maybe she's interested in humans, Jake suggested, trying to sound casual. Or maybe she's interested in a specific human, Emma replied with a knowing smile. Ben was less amused. This could be a problem, Captain. We don't need romantic complications with alien royalty. There's no romance, Jake said quickly. We just talked, that's all. But over the next few days, it became clear that talking was just the beginning. Lyra took them on tour of the city, showing them parts of culture that most outsiders never saw. She was smart and funny, though her humor was different from human jokes. She asked endless questions about Earth, fascinated by things Jake had always taken for granted. You have only one government for your entire planet, she asked one afternoon as they walked through a market district. Well, we have many countries, but yes, we're working on unity, Jake explained. It's messy and slow, but we're trying. That's remarkable. Most species don't achieve global cooperation until they're much older. She paused at a stall selling colorful fruits. Try this. It's a delicacy. Jake bit into the fruit. It tasted like strawberries mixed with sunshine. That's incredible. Lyra's face lit up with pleasure at his reaction. It was a look Jake was starting to recognize. Behind the formal princess mask, there was a real person who just wanted someone to share things with. Emma pulled Jake aside that evening. The council is watching you too. I've heard whispers. What kind of whispers? The concerned kind. Apparently, Princess Lyra is supposed to marry Prince Al of the Empire. It's been arranged since she was a child. A political alliance. Jake's chest tightened. She never mentioned that. Would you? It's probably not something she wants to think about. Emma put a hand on his shoulder. Just be careful, Jake, for both your sakes. But being careful became harder as the days passed. Lyra showed them ancient libraries filled with knowledge from 1,000 worlds. She took them to concerts where music came from instruments that played with light instead of sound. She taught them to eat with the strange utensils that changed shape based on what food they held. And through it all, Jake saw her change. The bored princess from the throne room disappeared. In her place was someone alive and curious, someone who laughed at Jake's terrible attempts to pronounce words, someone who listened with genuine interest when Emma explained human history. One afternoon, dark clouds suddenly filled the sky. Rain began to fall in sheets, cold and heavy. Lyra grabbed Jake's hand and pulled him toward shelter. They ended up under the roof of a small market stall, pressed close together to stay dry. I've never seen rain like this, Jake said, watching water pour down like a waterfall. The summer storms are beautiful, Lyra agreed. She was still holding his hand. Neither of them seemed to notice. Jake remembered his emergency rations and pulled out a small package. Want to try something from Earth? What is it? Chocolate. He broke off a piece and offered it to her. Lyra took it carefully and put it in her mouth. Her eyes went wide. I don't have words. What kind of magic is this? Jake laughed. No magic, just cocoa beans and sugar. Here, try this too. He poured some coffee from his thermos into the lid. Lyra sipped it and made a sound of pure delight. You humans are alchemists. How do you make things taste like happiness? Years of practice and a lot of caffeine addiction, Jake joked. They were standing very close now. The rain drummed on the roof above them. Lyra's silver eyes reflected the gray sky. Jake, she said softly, thank you. For what? The chocolate. For treating me like a person, for making me laugh, for reminding me that life can be simple and good. She looked down at their still-joined hands. I've forgotten what that feels like. Before Jake could respond, a loud crack split the air. The building behind them exploded in a shower of stone and fire. Ben appeared out of nowhere, tackling Jake to the ground. Lyra moved with lightning speed, her hands suddenly holding weapons that seemed to materialize from thin air. Protect the princess, voices shouted in. Guards in silver armor rushed forward, forming a circle around Lyra and the humans. More explosions rocked the market. People screamed and ran. Smoke filled the air. Through the chaos, Jake saw figures in dark armor advancing with weapons drawn. Assassins, one of the guards yelled. Lyra moved like water and lightning combined. She blocked attacks Jake couldn't even see coming, her weapons flashing in the dim light. This was not the gentle woman who had laughed at his jokes. This was a warrior princess, trained from birth to defend herself and her people. One of the assassins got past the guards and lunged at Jake with a blade that glowed with energy. Jake tried to dodge, but he was too slow. The blade was coming straight for his chest. Then Lyra was there. She blocked the blade with one weapon and struck the assassin with the other. The attacker fell and didn't move. Get them to safety, Lyra commanded. More guards surrounded Jake, Emma, and Ben, pushing them back toward the palace. Jake looked back and saw Lyra fighting 3 attackers at once. She was outnumbered but not outmatched. Every move was precise and deadly, but there were too many of them. We can't leave her, Jake shouted, trying to break free from the guards. The princess ordered us to protect you, one guard said firmly. She can handle herself. But Jake saw another assassin moving behind Lyra, raising a weapon while she fought the others. Without thinking, he grabbed a fallen guard's weapon and threw it. It wasn't a good throw. The weapon tumbled through the air awkwardly, but it was enough to distract the assassin for 1 second. 1 second was all Lyra needed. She spun and struck, taking down the assassin before he could fire. Then it was over. The remaining assassins retreated, disappearing into the smoke. City guards flooded the area. Medical teams rushed to help the wounded. Lyra turned and saw Jake being held by the guards. Blood ran down her arm from a cut, but she didn't seem to notice. She walked over to him, her weapons vanishing back into wherever they had come from. Are you hurt? She asked, checking him quickly for injuries. I'm fine. Are you okay? Jake saw the blood on her arm. You're injured. It's nothing. But her hands were shaking slightly. The adrenaline was wearing off. You threw a weapon at an assassin. That was very stupid. You're welcome, Jake said with a weak smile. Lyra stared at him for a moment. Then she started laughing. It was a slightly hysterical laugh, the kind that comes after a near-death experience. You're absolutely insane, you know that. I've been told. Jake was laughing too now, even though nothing was funny. They had almost died, but they were alive, and that seemed like a good enough reason to laugh. The palace healers worked on both of them. Lyra's wound was shallow and would heal quickly. Jake had some bruises from Ben's tackle, but nothing serious. That evening, as the healers finished bandaging a cut on Jake's arm, Lyra came to check on him. She had changed into clean clothes, and her arm was wrapped in some kind of glowing bandage. Hey, sweetie, Jake said without thinking. It was what he used to call his sister when she worried too much. The words just came out. Thanks for the save back there. Lyra stopped. Her blue skin darkened slightly around her cheeks. Was she blushing? Jake wasn't sure if could blush, but it looked like she was. Yes, darling, she replied. using the human term of endearment carefully as if testing how it felt. That's what friends do for each other. They looked at each other for a long moment. Then they both started laughing again. But this time, there was something else in their laughter, something warm and precious and maybe a little bit frightening. Emma watched from the doorway and sighed quietly. This was definitely getting complicated. Later that night, Jake learned more about the attack. The assassins were from the Empire, Prince Al's people. They had tried to kill Jake to remove him as an interference in the marriage arrangement. They see you as a threat, Ben explained grimly, which means they've noticed how the princess looks at you. Jake sat on his bed, processing this information. Someone had tried to kill him because of a political marriage arrangement. This was not what he had signed up for when he joined the diplomatic corps. But when he closed his eyes, he saw Lyra's smile. He heard her laugh. He remembered how her hand felt in his. And he knew, despite all the danger and politics and complications, that he wouldn't trade these last few days for anything. In her own quarters, Princess Lyra stood by her window, looking out at the 3 moons. Her advisors had spent an hour lecturing her about proper behavior and maintaining appropriate distance from the humans. She had nodded and agreed to everything they said. But in her heart, she knew something had changed. For the first time in years, she felt alive. She felt seen. And it was all because of a human captain who treated her like a person, who shared his chocolate, who threw weapons badly to save her life. "This is going to be a problem," she whispered to the moons. But she was smiling. The attack changed everything. The Empire sent an angry message demanding that humans be expelled from space immediately. Prince Al himself was coming with a fleet of warships to ensure the marriage alliance proceeded as planned. The Emperor called a meeting with Jake and his team. The old ruler looked tired as he sat on his throne. His silver eyes held centuries of wisdom and current worry. "Captain," the Emperor began, "I find myself in a difficult position. I like your people. You are interesting and bring fresh perspectives, but they are powerful. A war with them would cost millions of lives." Jake stood straight, trying not to show his fear. "Your Majesty, what would it take for humanity to be worth that risk?" The Emperor leaned forward. "That is the question, isn't it? What can your young species offer that makes you more valuable than peace with the—" "Give us a chance to show you," Jake said. "One demonstration. If we fail to prove our worth, we'll leave peacefully and never contact you again." The Emperor studied him for a long moment. "Very well. You have 3 days to prepare your demonstration. But know this, Captain. If you fail, my daughter will marry Prince Al, and humans will be forbidden from entering our space for 100 years. The weight of those words pressed down on Jake's shoulders. He had just bet humanity's entire future on a demonstration he hadn't even planned yet. Emma, Ben, and the rest of the team worked around the clock. They pulled together examples of human technology, art, and culture. They prepared presentations on human medical advances, engineering solutions, and diplomatic strategies. But Jake felt like something was missing. They were ancient and advanced. What could humans possibly show them that they hadn't seen before? Lyra visited their quarters that night. She wasn't supposed to be there. Her advisors had forbidden her from seeing Jake after the assassination attempt, but she came anyway, wearing a hooded cloak to hide her identity. "You shouldn't be here," Jake said, though he was glad to see her. "I know," she pulled back her hood. "I heard about your demonstration. Jake, you don't have to do this. You can leave. Find another species to make contact with. Don't risk your people's future for you," Jake finished gently. "Lyra, this isn't just about you, though I won't pretend that's not part of it. This is about giving humanity a chance. We deserve to be part of the galactic community. But what can you possibly show them? My people have been traveling the stars for 50,000 years. We've seen everything." Jake smiled. "Maybe that's the problem. Maybe you've seen so much that you've stopped looking." The next day, the demonstration hall was packed. Officials from every major species in the Empire attended. The council sat in the front rows, their expressions doubtful. The Emperor sat on a raised platform, watching everything. Jake walked onto the stage. His heart pounded, but he kept his voice steady. Honorable members of the galactic community, we know humanity is young. We know we don't have the technology or knowledge of older species, but we do have something unique. We have perspective. He activated a hologram. It showed Earth slowly rotating. We are a species that survived by adapting. We faced countless challenges: ice ages, plagues, natural disasters, wars with ourselves. Every time we found new ways to solve problems because we had to. The audience looked polite but unimpressed. They had heard similar stories from 100 other species. Then Emma stepped forward. We brought examples of our problem-solving abilities, our medical techniques that combine technology with understanding of biological adaptation, our engineering that works with nature instead of against it, our art that captures emotion in ways that speak across species barriers. For the next hour, the human team presented. They showed medical nanobots that could adapt to any species' biology. They demonstrated AI that could learn any language in hours. They played music that made several aliens cry. They solved math problems using methods they had never considered. It was impressive. The audience responded with polite interest, but Jake could tell it wasn't enough. They were still just another species with some interesting tricks. Then everything changed. A guard rushed into the hall, whispering urgently to the Emperor. The old ruler's face went pale. He stood up quickly. The demonstration is postponed. There is an emergency. People started talking all at once. Jake saw Lyra on the edge of the crowd, and her expression made his blood run cold. Something was very wrong. He found her in the hallway outside. She was running toward the medical wing, her robes flying behind her. "Lyra, what happened?" "It's my brother, and he's collapsed. They think he's been poisoned." Jake ran with her to the medical wing. Inside, chaos reigned. Doctors surrounded a bed where a young prince lay unconscious. He looked about 15 in human years, with the same silver eyes as Lyra but closed now. His breathing was shallow. "We don't understand it," the head doctor was saying to the Emperor. "The poison is unlike anything in our database. It's attacking his cells in a way we've never seen." "Can you stop it?" the Emperor demanded. "We're trying, Your Majesty. But if we can't identify the poison, we can't create an antidote. He has maybe 6 hours." Lyra grabbed her father's arm. "There must be something." "We're doing everything we can," the doctor said helplessly. Jake watched the doctors work. They had incredible technology, machines that could scan every atom in a body, chemicals that could cure almost any disease, but they were following protocols, using standard procedures. They were looking for answers in their existing knowledge. And sometimes, existing knowledge wasn't enough. "Let me see the scans," Jake said suddenly. Everyone turned to stare at him. "This is not your concern, human," one of the doctors said coldly. "Jake, please," Lyra said quietly. She looked terrified. But Jake was thinking about what he had said in his demonstration, about human adaptation, about solving problems in new ways. "Just let me look. What do you have to lose?" The Emperor nodded. "Show him." Jake studied the holographic scans of the poison's effects. Emma and the human medical officer joined him. The 3 humans stared at data that meant nothing to them at first. "This pattern," Emma said slowly, "it reminds me of something. Jake, doesn't this look like—" "A virus mutation," Jake finished. "You see it too." Nodded, her fingers flying over her tablet. "It's not exactly like any Earth virus, but the behavior is similar. It's adapting to counter the treatments. Every time they try something, it evolves." "But that's impossible," a doctor protested. "Poisons don't evolve." "This one does," said firmly. Because it's not really a poison. It's a bioweapon designed to look like a poison. Whoever created this knew your medical protocols. They knew you'd try standard antidotes. The weapon was designed to counter each one. The head doctor's expression shifted from anger to realization. Then how do we stop it? We don't fight it, Emma said. We confuse it. Pulled up information on human medical history. On Earth, we dealt with superbugs, diseases that evolved resistance to everything we threw at them. We learned that sometimes the answer isn't a stronger medicine. It's a combination of unexpected treatments that the disease can't adapt to fast enough. We hit it with multiple treatments simultaneously, Jake explained. Things that shouldn't work together, things that seem random. We overwhelm its ability to adapt. The doctors looked skeptical. Their assistant physician, a younger doctor named Ha, spoke up. That goes against all standard medical practice. Standard practice is killing him, said bluntly. This way he might survive. The Emperor looked at his son, then at the humans. Do it. What followed was the most intense 3 hours of Jake's life. Worked with the doctors, combining human and alien medicine in ways that made the senior physicians nervous. Emma analyzed the bioweapon's responses, predicting its adaptations. Jake coordinated, making sure everyone understood each other despite the language and cultural barriers. They threw everything at the poison, old medicines mixed with new, treatments that seemed to contradict each other, approaches from human history combined with alien technology. And slowly, incredibly, it started working. The bioweapon couldn't adapt fast enough. It tried to counter one treatment and became vulnerable to another. It evolved to resist the alien medicine and became susceptible to the human approaches. After 3 hours, N's breathing steadied. The scans showed the bioweapon breaking down, unable to maintain its attack. After 4 hours, the young prince opened his eyes. "Sister," he whispered weakly. Lyra grabbed his hand, tears streaming down her face. "I'm here. You're going to be okay." The Emperor stood frozen, staring at his son who had been dying just hours before. Then he turned to Jake, Emma, and... "You saved him. Our best doctors couldn't help, but you 3 humans saved my son's life." "We all did it together, Your Majesty," said respectfully. "Your doctors provided the technology and knowledge. We just offered a different perspective." The Emperor smiled, though his eyes were still wet. "A different perspective, yes." He looked at Jake with new understanding. "This is what humanity brings, not just technology, not just knowledge, but the ability to see problems in new ways, to find solutions where others see only dead ends." Word of the prince's recovery spread quickly. By that evening, the entire palace knew what had happened. The demonstration was no longer needed. Humanity had proven its worth in the most dramatic way possible. That night, Jake found Lyra in the garden where they had first talked. She was sitting on the same bench, looking at the stars. But this time, when she saw him, she stood up and walked straight to him. "Thank you," she said. "You saved my brother's life. And Emma did most of the work. I just..." Lyra pulled him into a hug. It was sudden and fierce. "Thank you," she repeated, her voice breaking. Jake hugged her back, feeling her tremble against him. They stood like that for a long moment, under the light of 3 moons. When they finally stepped apart, Lyra looked at him with those silver eyes that no longer seemed alien at all. "The Emperor is declaring humanity a protectorate species," she said. "Under our protection and as our equals. It's almost unheard of for such a young species." "That's wonderful," Jake said, but he was watching her face, seeing the sadness there. "But you're not happy." "Prince Al arrives tomorrow with his fleet. The marriage will proceed as planned." She looked down. "My father is grateful for what you did, but the alliance with thee is too important. One life saved doesn't change centuries of politics." "What do you want?" Jake asked quietly. Lyra met his eyes. "I want to be free. I want to choose my own path. I want..." She stopped, but her expression finished the sentence. Jake's heart ached. Lyra. Don't, she said softly. Don't say anything. We both know this can't work. You're human. I'm royalty. We're from different worlds in every way that matters. But, please, Jake, let me have this moment. Let me pretend, just for tonight, that things could be different. So they sat together on the bench, hands not quite touching. They looked at the stars and talked about nothing important. They laughed at small jokes and shared comfortable silence. And they both pretended they couldn't feel their hearts breaking. Prince Al arrived with a show of force that made everyone nervous. 20 warships filled the sky above the capital. They were dark and angular, designed to look threatening. The message was clear. The Empire was not to be trifled with. Jake watched from a palace window as the prince's shuttle landed. Beside him, Ben crossed his arms. I already don't like this guy. You haven't even met him yet. Don't need to. Anyone who arrives with that many guns isn't planning to be friendly. Jake couldn't argue with that logic. Prince Al was tall even for a. His skin was deep red like polished stone, and his eyes were black with no white at all. He wore armor that looked both ceremonial and functional, covered in symbols of his military victories. When he walked, people moved out of his way. The formal dinner that night was tense. Jake and his team were invited as honored guests, thanks to their new status as Earth's representatives to a protectorate species. But the atmosphere in the grand hall was cold. Al sat beside Lyra at the head table. She wore a formal gown of silver and gold, her face an emotionless mask. The prince spoke to her as if she was a possession he was checking on. You look well, Al said. Though I hear you've been spending time with primitives, I hope that hasn't affected your judgment. Lyra's jaw tightened slightly. The humans saved my brother's life. They deserve respect. They got lucky. Al waved a dismissive hand. Your father tells me they mixed medicines like children playing with chemistry sets. Hardly impressive. From his seat at a lower table, Jake felt his anger rising. He caught Emma's warning look and tried to stay calm. The prince turned his attention to the human table. So, these are the humans everyone is talking about. You certainly don't look like much. Small, weak. I've seen stronger species die out within a generation. Jake stood up slowly. Ben grabbed his arm, but Jake shook his head. He walked to the head table and gave a respectful bow to the Emperor, then to Lyra. He ignored Al. Your Majesty, Princess Lyra's hand, thank you for your hospitality. We are honored to be here. Did I give you permission to approach? Al demanded. Jake finally looked at him. I wasn't aware I needed your permission. I'm a guest of the Emperor, not your subject. The hall went silent. The Emperor looked interested. Lyra's eyes went wide. Al's face darkened with rage. You dare speak to me that way? I dare to speak with respect to those who deserve it, Jake replied calmly. You've insulted my species, dismissed a medical miracle, and treated Princess Lyra like an object. So no, I don't think I need to ask your permission for anything. Al stood up. He towered over Jake by almost 2 feet. Do you know who I am? I am a prince of the Empire. I have led armies across a dozen worlds. I have killed more enemies than you have days in your short human life. Then you should act like it, Jake said quietly. A real warrior doesn't need to prove himself by being cruel to others. For a moment, Jake thought Al might attack him right there. The prince's hand went to his weapon. Guards tensed. Then Lyra stood up. Enough, she said coldly. This is a formal dinner, not a battlefield. Both of you will sit down. But something had changed in her eyes. When she looked at Al, there was no respect, only disgust. The dinner ended early. As people filed out, Jake felt someone touch his arm. It was Lyra. That was very foolish, she whispered, and very brave. I couldn't just sit there and listen to him talk about you like that. I know, she squeezed his arm gently, but you've made a powerful enemy. She was right. The next morning, Al sent a formal challenge. He demanded a public apology from Jake and from the Emperor for allowing primitives to dishonor a prince of the. The Emperor called an emergency council meeting. Jake stood before the assembled nobles and officials, feeling very small and very human. "This is a disaster," one advisor said. "If we don't apologize, they will take it as an insult. They could declare war." "But the human saved Prince N," another argued. "We cannot simply abandon him to satisfy Al's pride." The debate went on for hours. Jake stayed silent, letting them talk. He had caused this problem. He should face the consequences. Then Lyra stood up. Every eye turned to her. "I will not marry Prince Al," she said clearly. The room erupted. Advisors shouted. The Emperor looked shocked. Al, who had been sitting in the corner with a smug expression, jumped to his feet. "You dare refuse me?" he roared. "I dare." Lyra's voice was steady. "I have watched you insult my friends. I have seen you treat others with cruelty and contempt. I will not bind myself to a man who measures his worth by how much others fear him." "The marriage has been arranged since childhood," an advisor protested. "You cannot simply refuse." "Then I invoke the cause," Lyra announced. The room fell completely silent. Jake looked at Emma, who was frantically searching her translation device for what that word meant. The Emperor leaned forward. "Daughter, are you certain? The cause has not been invoked in 300 years. "I am certain." Al's expression changed from anger to something like satisfaction. "The ancient rite, how appropriate. Very well, Princess, I accept your challenge." "It's not a challenge to you," Lyra said. "It's a test of worthiness, and I name a champion to represent my right to choose my own path." "Who?" Al laughed. "One of your guards, your father's soldiers. They can try, but none will defeat me." Lyra turned and looked directly at Jake. "I choose Captain Jake of Earth to be my champion." The room exploded with objections. A human, impossible, absurd, against tradition. But Jake was walking forward. He didn't fully understand what he was agreeing to, but he knew it mattered. "I accept." The Emperor raised a hand for silence. "This is most irregular, but the ancient texts do not specify that a champion must be. They say only that the champion must be chosen by the one whose freedom is at stake." He looked at Jake. "Do you understand what you've agreed to, human?" "Not really, Your Majesty, but I'm willing to learn." For the first time in days, the Emperor smiled. "The cause is a test of worthiness. 3 trials: wisdom, courage, heart. Win all 3 and Princess Lyra is free to choose her own fate. Lose even one and the marriage proceeds as planned." "And if I lose?" Jake asked. "Then you have failed your champion. The penalty for such failure is exile. You and all humans will be forbidden from space forever." Jake swallowed hard. He was betting everything. Again, "When do we start?" "You have 1 week to prepare," the Emperor said. "The trials will be held in the grand arena. All the Empire will watch." That night, Jake couldn't sleep. The weight of what he'd agreed to press down on him. He was going to compete against an alien prince who had trained his entire life for combat. He had 7 days to prepare for trials he knew nothing about. There was a knock on his door. Lyra stood there, still in her formal robes. "Why did you do it?" she asked, stepping inside. "You could have stayed silent, let the council handle it, but you volunteered to risk everything." Jake met her eyes. "Because you deserve to be free. Because no one should be forced to marry someone they don't love. Because—" he stopped. "Because what?" "Because when I look at you, I see someone amazing. Smart and strong and kind. Someone who's trapped by duty but dreams of freedom. And I couldn't just stand by and watch that light go out." Lyra moved closer. They were standing very near now, close enough that Jake could see the silver patterns in her eyes, the way her skin seemed to glow slightly in the dim light. "Jake," she said softly, "you are either the bravest man I've ever met or the most foolish." "Probably both." She smiled. Then slowly she reached up and touched his face. Her hand was warm. "If you win, I will be free, but what happens then?" "I don't know," Jake admitted. "We figure it out together." "Together," she repeated, as if testing the word. "I like that." She leaned in and kissed him. It was gentle and brief, but it felt like a promise. When she pulled back, her expression was serious. "I have to teach you everything about the cause. We have 7 days. It won't be easy. Nothing worth doing ever is." Over the next week, Jake trained harder than he ever had in his life. Lyra taught him philosophy for the wisdom trial. Ben worked with him on combat skills for the courage trial. Emma researched every piece of information she could find about the cause and its history. Jake learned about meditation techniques. He studied their ancient texts. He practiced with weapons he had never seen before. Every muscle ached. His mind felt full to bursting with new information. On the 5th night, exhausted and frustrated, Jake threw down his training weapon. "I can't do this. Al has trained for this his entire life. I have less than a week. How can I possibly win?" Lyra picked up the weapon and handed it back to him. "You won't win by being like him. You'll win by being you." "What does that mean?" "It means stop trying to be a warrior. You're human, use that." She touched his hand. "You see problems differently. You find solutions where we see walls. That's your strength. Don't forget it." Jake looked at her tired face, saw the hope in her eyes, and found new determination. "Okay, let's go again." By the 7th day, Jake was as ready as he would ever be. The grand arena was packed with thousands of spectators from across the empire. Cameras broadcast the event to billions more across dozens of worlds. Jake stood in the center of the arena wearing simple clothes. No armor, no weapons yet. Across from him, Al wore his battle armor, covered in weapons and looking confident. The Emperor stood in the royal box. "Let the cause begin. First trial, wisdom." A hologram appeared between Jake and Al. It showed an ancient philosophical puzzle, one that had stumped scholars for centuries. "The question is this," the Emperor announced. "Can perfect order and perfect freedom coexist? Justify your answer." Al answered first. His response was textbook perfect, quoting ancient philosophers and traditional wisdom. "Order must come before freedom," he argued. "Without control, there is only chaos." Then it was Jake's turn. He looked at the puzzle from his human perspective. "On Earth we have a saying," Jake began. "Perfect is the enemy of good." Maybe the question is wrong. Maybe we shouldn't seek perfect order or perfect freedom. Maybe we should seek balance, enough order to protect people, enough freedom to let them grow, not perfect, just good enough. The arena was silent. This wasn't a traditional answer. It didn't quote any ancient texts, but it made sense in a way the old arguments never had. The judges, 3 ancient scholars, conferred quietly. Then they announced, "The human's answer is accepted. First trial passed." Al's face darkened. He hadn't expected that. "Second trial," the Emperor called. "Courage." The arena floor opened, revealing an obstacle course filled with deadly challenges. Fire, water, heights, narrow passages. It was designed to test physical bravery and skill. Al went first. He moved through the course with brutal efficiency, using raw strength and aggression. He finished in 12 minutes. It was an impressive time. Jake looked at the course and saw all the ways he could fail. He wasn't as strong as Al. He wasn't as fast, but Lyra's words echoed in his mind. "Don't try to be like him, be you." So Jake didn't try to match Al's strength. Instead, he used physics. He found leverage points. He used momentum instead of muscle. He solved each challenge like a puzzle rather than attacking them head-on. He finished in 8 minutes. The crowd roared. Al stared in disbelief. Second trial passed, the judges announced. Now Al looked worried. He had trained his entire life, and this human was matching him. No, beating him. Final trial, the Emperor said, his voice heavy. Heart. This was the trial everyone feared. Two crystalline pillars rose from the arena floor. Jake and Al were each guided to one. Place your hands on the crystal, a judge instructed. It will read your deepest truth, your true intentions, why you fight this battle. The crystal does not lie. Al placed his hands on his crystal. It began to glow. Images appeared above it showing his thoughts. He wanted power, status, control. He saw Lyra as a prize, a way to unite two empires under his rule. He thought of the respect he would command, the fear his enemies would feel. The crystal glowed red, the color of ambition and pride. Then it was Jake's turn. He placed his hands on the crystal and his mind opened. The crystal showed his thoughts. He thought of Lyra's smile, her laugh, the way she looked at the stars with wonder. He wanted her to be happy. If that meant being with him, wonderful. If it meant she chose someone else, as long as she was free to choose, he could accept that. He wasn't fighting for himself. He was fighting for her right to decide her own future. The crystal glowed bright white, the color of pure intention. The judges didn't need to consult. The heart trial is won by the human. The cause is complete. The arena erupted in cheers. Jake stood there stunned. He had done it. He had actually done it. Lyra ran down from the royal box, not caring about protocol. She threw her arms around Jake, laughing and crying at the same time. You won, you actually won. Jake held her tight. We won, you're free now. Al stood frozen, unable to believe what had happened. The Emperor descended to the arena floor. The ancient rites have been satisfied, he announced to the crowd. Princess Lyra's hand is free to choose her own path. He turned to Al. Return to your people. The alliance you sought is broken. But know this. If you threaten my family or the humans again, you will face the full might of the Empire. Al left without another word, his pride shattered. That evening, as the celebrations continued, Jake found himself back in the garden with Lyra. The same bench, the same 3 moons, but everything had changed. What happens now? Jake asked. Lyra took his hand. Now I get to choose, and I choose you, Jake, if you'll have me. Are you sure? I'm just a human, you're a princess. This won't be easy. Nothing worth doing ever is, Lyra said with a smile, repeating his words back to him. But we'll figure it out together. She kissed him under the 3 moons, and Jake knew that his life would never be the same. But he wouldn't have it any other way. The days after the cause were complicated. The Empire was furious. They sent angry messages and made threats, but the Emperor stood firm. The ancient rites had been followed. The decision was final. Not everyone was happy about it, even among the. Some nobles thought it was wrong for a princess to choose a human. Others worried about how this would affect their standing in the galactic community. The council held endless meetings about what it all meant. But Jake and Lyra didn't care about the politics. They had fought too hard for their freedom to let others take it away now. The Emperor called them to his private chambers one evening. Jake was nervous. This was only the 2nd time he had spoken with the Emperor alone. Sit, the old ruler said, gesturing to comfortable chairs. He poured them drinks from a crystal bottle. You have created quite a situation, Captain. I'm sorry if I've caused problems, Your Majesty. Problems? The Emperor laughed. You saved my son's life. You won the cause. You gave my daughter a chance at happiness. I am not unhappy with you, human. I am impressed. He sipped his drink. But we do need to address what comes next. You and Lyra cannot simply run off together. She is still a princess. She has duties. And you, Captain, represent all of humanity now. I understand, Jake said quietly. I don't think you do. The Emperor leaned forward. I am offering you both a position, ambassadors. You will travel between human and space, building our alliance. You will teach us about humanity and teach your people about us. It will be difficult work. You'll face opposition from both sides, but if anyone can do it, I believe you two can. Lyra reached for Jake's hand. We accept. Both of you, you haven't even discussed it. "We don't need to," Lyra said with a smile. "This is perfect. We get to be together and serve both our peoples." The Emperor nodded, satisfied. "Then it is settled. But first there is one more matter. Captain, you won the cause. By our laws that makes you nobility. You need a proper title." "I don't need." "It's not optional. The Council has decided. You are now Lord Jake, champion of the cause, defender of the eternal dynasty, friend to the people." Jake blinked. "That's a lot of titles." "Get used to it," the Emperor said with a rare smile. "You're royalty now, or close enough." The next months were a whirlwind. Jake and Lyra split their time between Earth and Prime. On Earth, Lyra amazed everyone with her intelligence and grace. She learned about human culture with genuine interest. She visited schools and hospitals. She spoke at the United Nations about cooperation between species. On Prime, Jake worked with the Emperor's advisors to strengthen the alliance. Human technology and knowledge combined to create new advances. Human creativity and precision made a powerful combination. Emma became the head of the Human Diplomatic Corps on Prime. Ben trained the first joint human security forces, started a medical exchange program that brought human doctors to learn from healers and vice versa. More human ships arrived, trade agreements were signed, cultural exchanges flourished. Within a year, there were human students studying at universities and tourists visiting Earth. It wasn't always easy. There were misunderstandings. Some still thought humans were too primitive. Some humans feared the advanced aliens. But Jake and Lyra were always there, bridging the gap, showing both peoples that differences made them stronger, not weaker. Prince N became one of Jake's closest friends. The young prince studied human history and became fascinated by Earth's cultures. He said Jake saving his life gave him a second chance, and he wanted to use it to build bridges between worlds. After 2 years of traveling and working, Jake and Lyra decided it was time to make their relationship official by both human and customs. The wedding was historic. It took place on a neutral station between Earth and Prime. Guests came from dozens of species across the Empire. Human traditions mixed with ceremonies. Jake wore both a human suit and formal robes. Lyra wore a dress designed by artists from both worlds. The Emperor performed the ceremony. Jake's mother performed the human ceremony. There wasn't a dry eye in the station. "Do you, Jake, take Lyra's hand as your partner to honor and cherish for all the days of your life?" his mother asked. "I do." "Do you, Lyra's hand, take Jake as your partner to honor and cherish for all the days of your life?" "I do." They exchanged rings made from materials from both their worlds. Earth gold mixed with crystal. When they kissed, the crowd from both species cheered. The celebration lasted 3 days. Humans and danced together. They shared food and stories. They learned from each other. It was everything Jake and Lyra had hoped for. Not just a wedding, but a symbol of what was possible when different worlds came together. Years passed. Jake and Lyra continued their work as ambassadors. They visited new worlds, made new friends, solved new problems. The human alliance grew stronger every year. Other species began to see humans differently. Yes, they were young and sometimes foolish, but they were also creative and brave and kind. They brought fresh perspectives to old problems. They made the Empire better. Jake and Lyra had children, 2 beautiful kids who were part human and part. They had their mother's silver eyes and their father's warm smile. They could speak both languages fluently and moved between both cultures with ease. They were the future made real. Emma married a scientist and had a family of her own. Ben became the head of security for the entire Human Diplomatic Corps. His medical program saved thousands of lives across dozens of species. The galaxy was changing, and humanity was part of that change. On the 5th anniversary of the day they met, Jake and Lyra returned to the palace gardens on Prime. It was late evening. The 3 moons hung in the sky, casting their familiar light over the flowers and paths. They walked to the bench where they had first talked, where a lonely princess and a curious human captain had started something neither of them expected. 5 years, Lyra said, sitting down. Can you believe it? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Jake sat beside her. Do you ever regret it, choosing me, everything that came after? Lyra looked at him with those silver eyes that still took his breath away. Never, not for a moment. You gave me freedom, you gave me love, you gave me a life worth living. You gave me the same, Jake said softly. He looked up at the stars. Hey, sweetie, remember when you thought humans were primitive and boring? Lyra laughed, that beautiful sound that Jake would never get tired of hearing. Her blue skin darkened slightly around her cheeks. Even after all these years, she still blushed when he called her sweetie. Yes, darling, she replied, using the human endearment with perfect comfort now. I was wonderfully, completely wrong. They both laughed, holding hands under the 3 moons, surrounded by the garden where their story began. Their children ran up, full of energy. Mom, Dad, Grandpa wants to show us the new ship designs. We'll be there in a minute, Lyra promised. The kids ran off again. Jake and Lyra sat for another moment, enjoying the peace. You know what the best part is? Jake asked. What? We get to keep doing this. Tomorrow we leave for Earth. Next month we visit the outer colonies. Next year, who knows? We get to keep building bridges, keep bringing worlds together, keep showing everyone that different doesn't mean enemy. Lyra squeezed his hand. Together. Always together. They stood up, ready to join their family, ready for whatever came next. The human captain and the alien princess who had found each other against all odds and changed the galaxy in the process. As they walked back to the palace, hand in hand, Jake thought about everything that had happened. The first nervous meeting, the assassination attempt, the cause, the wedding, their children, the alliance that kept growing stronger. It had all started with a simple moment, a dropped data slate, a human who treated a princess like a person, a conversation in a garden under 3 moons. Sometimes the smallest moments led to the biggest changes. Behind them, the garden glowed softly in the moonlight. The bench sat empty, waiting for the next 2 people who might sit there and start their own story. Because that was the thing about bridges. Once you built one, others could follow. Jake and Lyra had built a bridge between 2 worlds. Their children would build more. And someday, those bridges would connect the entire galaxy. But for now, they had dinner with family to get to. They had work to do tomorrow. They had a life to live together. And that, Jake thought with a smile, was more than enough. The story of humanity in the stars had just begun. And it started with love, laughter, and the simple act of seeing another person for who they really were. The end.